Cutback for Vasilev and Lukic! A banger of a strike for Jovan Lukic's first MLS goal!
It's fallen out to Westfield! Oh, wow! He's nearly taken the roof of the net off! Philadelphia pounce again!
Who gets his goal in his Union debut? The record signing! Off and running in his first appearance for the club! Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and this unbeaten run for the Philadelphia Union continues, Evan, as the Philadelphia Union draw against Austin FC by score 1-1, with Cavan Sullivan scoring his second MLS goal of this season, followed by a Brendan Hines-Ike goal off of a set piece. Both goals actually coming from set plays in this match. But regardless, Philadelphia Union remain undefeated through the first 6 games under interim head coach Ryan Richter. I know last episode with Evan and I, we had went pretty long, longer than what I think you guys are used to, and there were some topics we didn't get to, and so we'll make sure we get to them this episode. But once again, I told you guys last episode I would be joined by Evan Konigsberg. Evan, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Todd. How are you?
Pretty good. We were talking off air, man, just how these 3 games in a week, you know, you fall behind on some stuff. I know you had just posted your video. You said I almost said Brotherly Game, formerly Brotherly Game, Philadelphia Soccer Now, their Instagram page for your 3 thoughts, I would imagine, for Inter Miami. And I would imagine we'll get your 3 thoughts on this Austin game coming up here quickly. But it is a lot. As listeners know, I did not do a goals breakdown video for Inter Miami. It was just, man, just too much, honestly. I'll be honest. I mean, there was a lot of action in that game against Miami, a lot of good stuff to potentially break down, but I was like, I don't have the time to do this. So look, we stay consistent with the podcast, and I think that's what most of the people enjoy listening to, watching. So you got to prioritize what the listeners want. But yeah, Evan, we have a lot to talk about. And actually, I didn't even tell you that we were going to talk about this coming up. There was a lot of news that broke this past weekend with MLS moves that had happened, potential moves that are going to happen in MLS. And we don't normally see, I feel like, a lot of change between teams in MLS. I know it's changed a little bit with the cash for trade sales, and we saw a couple of those this past weekend. And I would imagine we'll potentially see another one coming out with Sporting Kansas City and New York City, but maybe that doesn't happen at all. So I do want to talk about the news, and then we'll go ahead and talk about the game. Talking about Ryan Richter's first 6 games, Ryan Richter going with the same starting 11 that he did against Inter Miami 4 days ago. And then we'll talk about Neil Pierre's stunning performance defensively, because there was a lot of people on social media after the Miami game saying, oh, he does nothing defensively. Did Neil Pierre pay attention to that noise on social media? Maybe. But regardless, Evan, let's get straight into the news. All right, Evan. So a lot of news to talk about. I guess we can start with this broke during the Philadelphia Union's game, and that is the Seattle Sounders agreeing to acquire for Dejan Joveljic from Sporting Kansas City for $6 million. And yeah, it's been a terrible time for Seattle fans. They've been going through it. I know they've been saying on social media they want new players, they want new signings, and that hadn't come. But now they get a player that's a proven goal scorer in MLS, and Dejan Joveljic from Sporting Kansas City, formerly of LA Galaxy. And now he goes back out west to Seattle Sounders, where they desperately need goal scorers. Were you surprised, Evan, at all to see Joveljic leave Sporting Kansas City, go to Seattle, where, if I'm not mistaken, Sporting Kansas City a year or 2 ago got a hefty fee to bring Dejan to Kansas City from LA Galaxy?
Yeah, so I was surprised at the fee, being that, Dejan Joveljic is a proven goal scorer in MLS. And I know a lot of the times when we're talking about filling holes in the Union's roster, we've discussed, they need somebody who's a proven goal scorer and not just guys with, higher floors that we know can do it in this league. And Dejan Joveljic is one of those guys. He was a goal scorer on the Galaxy. They bring him to SKC for a steep fee, and it's shocking to me, Todd, that a $6 million cash for was enough to get this done. And I think it's a great fit for Seattle, and I think it makes perfect sense for them given the hole that they have at striker. I know they wanted to give Osaze Di Rosario a bigger shot this year at striker, and he has not taken that chance. Nate Musovski is serviceable, but given the sporadic minutes he's had in and out of the lineup this year, he hasn't been as effective. And yeah, this is a really good deal for Seattle. Now, does it put their season back on track? I'm not sure. I think they have a lot of issues given that their DPs are constantly unavailable. Jesus Ferreira just went down. Jordan Morris has been down most of the year. He came back and he's down again. And they just have so much money. And Pedro de la Vega is just never healthy. They just have so much money on those premium roster slots that while this is a great signing, I think that it's going to be the first of many moves that Seattle make to try to get this roster back on track.
And we see them bring in a Brazilian and Luis for $18 million. I believe the
SKC, yes.
fee was SKC, exactly. And then there was another report out there that Sporting Kansas City bid $25 million for New York City's Nico Mercau Fernandez, which is insane. And if you're in New York City, I don't know how you don't say, all right, we'll drop them off to the airport. We'll drive them to you guys. Like, I would accept that instantly. $25 million. That was mind blowing when the reports came out of South America. I know Tom Brogan eventually confirmed those reports too. But Sporting Kansas City, they're going for it, Evan, it seems like.
Yeah, so I didn't pull this up beforehand, but I believe that $25 million cash would be the MLS record transfer. I think it was Sun was just right around 20 this past year, but that's like the ballpark we're talking about with this Nico Fernandez deal. And it's very shocking to me for SKC because, well, we know that they've had big offers out for players. When Cristiano Ronaldo was leaving Manchester United, SKC was in conversations with his camp. Mo Salah recently, they claimed it was a long shot at the time, but they were having conversations with Mo Salah. So they've been big game hunting consistently. And I just think, I would have thought that their eyes would have been, set on a European player, a big name, kind of like the Robert Lewandowski deal we've seen recently, like the Antoine Griezmann deal that we've seen recently. But here, they're going for one of the stars of MLS, Nico Fernandez Mercau, he's a very good player, but my gosh, like a league record fee. And I think it's all the more shocking for me considering, this SKC team, they're not one piece away, Todd. They add Nico Fernandez to this team and they're still a bottom half roster at least. There's a lot of holes in this team. And I guess I wonder why they're not spreading some of this money around and trying to fill a lot of the empty gaps in their roster right now, because I just don't think if you throw Nico Fernandez and Andre Luis in this team that they instantly become contenders. I think they have a lot more work to do than that.
Do you think this is, and I know Sporting Kansas City recently got new owners, and so they said, as you pointed out, that they were pretty ambitious trying to get Mohamed Salah in there. Doesn't wind up happening, goes to Turkey, which is another story. If we were covering European soccer, I can't believe all the players that have now left Saudi Arabia that are going back to European football, playing in Turkey, which I remember years ago, Evan, when you had Wesley Sneijder, you had Samuel Eto'o playing in Turkey, and that seemed to kind of subsidize itself, and now it seems like Turkey's going again for maybe players that aren't in their prime anymore, but going back for well-known players. Players go and get the bag in Saudi Arabia, and they still want to play European football. They still want to play in the Champions League. They want to play a decent quality, and now they wind up coming back to Europe and going back to Turkey, and maybe not an ideal situation for some of these guys, but I'm sure the money doesn't hurt. But that's, again, another story for another day. But looking at Sporting Kansas City, yes, to get a new owner in, and maybe this is a site to come where we expect roster rule changes. We talked about it last episode, but maybe some of these ownership groups know that it's going to be significant roster role changes, maybe to DPs, maybe to U22s and all that stuff. And so, yeah, for positions like you had mentioned that Sporting Kansas City lack, maybe they feel like, okay, we can make those moves come the wintertime because the roster roles are going to be that much different than what they currently are.
Right. Yeah. But I think that's a good point, given that the amount of money that they're spending on, or at least they were trying to spend on two forwards between Luis and between Nico Fernandez. And, circling back to the comments you made about Turkey, I think it's a little bit cooler than Saudi Arabia just because the fan support there is so good. The fans in Turkey are crazy. So I'm intrigued about what's going on there. But circling back to SKC, yeah, I think it's a gamble because, again, we've kind of had over the last couple MLS seasons hints that there will be roster rule changes, and there isn't much. I know we had the option of the 3 DPs and 2 U22s or 2 DPs and 4 U22s. But, if you were banking on there being 5 DPs or 4 DPs, that wouldn't really pay off for you because the roster rule changes didn't come. So I think they need to be careful if they're going to spend in this window. But again, I just feel like they've kind of been in this transitional phase the last couple seasons. And, I don't know exactly what the timeline for SKC is, but maybe their philosophy is that they want to get their building blocks first, their main pieces first, and then build the rest of the team around those players.
Yeah, I agree. And Cole says they just lost to Atlanta. I was watching that game prior to us going live. And both of those teams, I mean, they show why they're the two worst teams record-wise in MLS. But, yeah, and we can go ahead and talk about that real quick. I mean, Sunday night primetime game between the two worst teams in the league, like, what is that? They didn't want to flex that and change that? That's unbelievable, Evan. Why would you put fans that maybe are tuning in for the first time through that pain?
Yeah, and it's a shame because the NYCFC Revs game today looked kind of cool. I mean, there's a couple really good, talented youth national team players on the Revs. Carlos Heel's really fun to watch. So is Nico Fernandez, and Matt Freese makes a great double save on a penalty. And, that would have been a cool Sunday night soccer game. But, I don't know if there's a certain agreement in the contract that each team gets X amount of Sunday night standalone games, because I know that can be tricky for a schedule. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, but yeah, it was a very strange selection for like a standalone marquee marketed match.
Yeah, and then the last bit of news, and then we'll talk about the Union game. It's been a while since we had MLS news to really talk about, or that I've decided to talk about MLS news. And I was like, there's a lot of moves that have happened within the league, so let's bring it up. And the last bit of news we'll talk about is San Jose Earthquake acquiring or agreeing to a deal to acquire Eduard Löwen from St. Louis City. And this is so interesting to me, Evan, because that team's completely changed, St. Louis City. They recently moved on from Marcel Hartl, sell him back to Hannover 96 in the Bundesliga 2. Joel Klaus gets moved on last season to LA Galaxy. And those were 3 key players for Sporting Kansas City. I know, and they still have Berkey, the goalkeeper, but this team almost looks unrecognizable, Evan. This is for sure a completely different team than what they were when they first entered the league under then head coach Bradley Cornell, winning the Western Conference. And yeah, a lot of questionable moves this organization's been making. And I love to see the chaos. I'd love to see just St. Louis piss off the fan base. I'd love to see just that whole organization in shambles. But yeah, it's a move that left me a little bit questionable. I know there's GAM going back to St. Louis City, which maybe they're make a move within the league. But yeah, how can you convince a team that's been struggling the last couple of years to really buy in when that's 3 key players that are now gone within the last year?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a turnover year under Yoann Damet, and I think that Damet has been kind of like a breath of fresh air for St. Louis. But at the same time, it's very strange because they play good soccer. And goal scoring has been a bit of an issue for them because they don't have a true finisher. And Simon Betcher, shout out Simon Betcher, Ocean City Nor'easters legend, so he's spent some time in the local area, but he has been finding the back of the net. But throughout the season, he does a lot of the right things and he can't put the ball in the back of the net. Kind of reminds you of a Bruno Damiani, if you will. But I think they're still looking for that striker, and fans are getting a little bit impatient. They recently added Carlo Holsa as the Marcel Hartel replacement. From what I know about these two outgoing transfers, Hartel and Löwen, it's very much about doing right by the player, in that Hartel wanted to move back to Germany. The offer came and they let him go for honestly way cheaper than he's worth, which was kind of a tough pill to swallow. And when it comes to Eduard Löwen, I want to preface this by saying Eduard Löwen is an awesome watch in MLS. And I remember when we first hired Bradley Carnell, part of me was thinking, I hope they can find a deal and bring this guy with him. Ends up bringing over Indy Vasilev, who's been pretty solid for the last couple of years for the Union. But Eduard Löwen is very talented player. And Tom Bogert did an article about this specific transfer. And for those that don't know, Eduard Löwen this year lost his wife to a battle with brain cancer, which was very sad. And the club was there to support him through the whole time. And the rationale behind this transfer wasn't the club giving up on him, but it was the contract negotiations had stalled. And he requested, okay, if you can't commit my long-term future to here, let me find a place that will commit to me long-term, probably so he can move his family and not have to worry about bouncing around for the next couple of years. So he ends up in San Jose, which is under Bruce Arena, which is an interesting fit for him. It's not the first team I think I would have pinned him at, and they've had kind of a downturn recently. But, for Eduard Löwen, I just hope that he gets in a situation that he's comfortable in, and we continue to, see him become himself again on the field, because he's a great player, great man. And, I just hope that everything starts to go right for him, because he deserves it.
Now, I do wonder if Ernst Tanner or Bradley Cornell was still at the club. I wonder if this would have been a move that the Union would have potentially have tried to have made. I know that Löwen's going to be a designated player the remainder of the season for San Jose. Then he can be bought down, kind of like Kai Wagner we expect next season. But yeah, I don't know. It does make you wonder, Evan, if people are still here. Is that a player that the Union would potentially go out and try to acquire? Doesn't happen, and now we move on. Still time in the window. I believe September 2nd is when the transfer window closes. We'll see if the Union go out and sign a forward or sign another player before the transfer window closes. Maybe there's going to be some departures. We shall see. But let's go ahead and talk about last night's Austin FC versus Philadelphia Union match. Like I said in the intro, this game ends 1-1. Cavan Sullivan opening the scoring in the 18th minute for the Union with a header. Brendan Hines-Ike also scoring a header for Austin FC in this match. And before we talk about, the same lineup, before we talk about Ryan Richter's first 6 games or Neil Pierre specifically, anything stand out to you, Evan, in this game against Austin?
Yeah, it was a sloppy one. I think it was... one of my favorite sayings when I talk to people when I'm watching a game that there's just no rhythm, I call it Wednesday night MLS. It's just like, oh, there's a game that has to happen because these two teams are both here and they have a game. It's their third in a week. And this was kind of like that. The Union have their third game in 7 days because they played last Sunday. So they didn't even get the Sunday rest day. So they played Sunday, Wednesday, and again on Saturday. And a lot of the same guys out there. And at kickoff, it was 98 degrees in Austin. So it couldn't have been easy. And I don't blame the players for it. But you could really see it on the field, especially towards the end of the first half. And honestly, from the 60th minute onward in the second half, you really see the players start to labor. And while, Austin is a weaker opponent, I think it's good that the boys went down there and they grinded out a draw, because that just could not have been an easy playing condition to be in.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that shocked a lot of people that Ryan Richter decided to go with the same lineup that he did against Miami. Again, we'll talk about that here in a bit. But, the Union, they score the 8th set-piece goal with Cavan Sullivan scoring that header, and then they concede a corner kick. And I had released the goals breakdown video earlier this morning or afternoon. Looking at both of those plays and then some chances created by the Union, big plays by Andre Blake and Ezekiel Alado. We'll hear from Bradley Cornell and Ryan Richter in a bit about Ezekiel Alado tracking back, helping break up a big moment in this match. But that play that Cavan Sullivan gets his second goal in the year, I do want to talk about that real quick, Evan, where it's a well-worked set piece. You see Milan Olaski on the corner kick. They decided to take it short. And Nathan Harriel starts outside the 18-yard box. Nobody for Alston's tracking him because he's a non-factor at that point. The Union have 5 players inside the box compared to the 6 players that are defending them for Alston. So they have the numeric advantage. There should be no issue there. But as soon as the ball gets played from Wagner back to Olaski, that's when you see Harriel make his run, and nobody picks him up. And Cavan Sullivan then does well to get himself back on side, and nobody picks up Cavan. He does well to find the space. Nathan Harriel, it's a great ball, floated in the back. And this team's been brilliant, I would say, under Ryan Richter since he's taken over. I know the Union have always, since Frank Leich has been the set piece coach, have always been well on set pieces, amongst the top 3 best in MLS since 2021. But I felt like there was so much wrong in the first 15 games of the season. Set pieces really weren't there for the club like they were last year. It seemed to really digress, and I think maybe part of that is because Kai Wagner wasn't here, taking majority of those. But again, it's Milan Olaski who plays that ball to the back post for Nathan Harriel, wins the header uncontested, and then it's a free header for Cavan Sullivan uncontested. But yeah, I think that's a big moment for Cavan, where you want to see Cavan shoot with his feet. You want to see him have the fancy flair. But I think it's also important to show, too, that, he can get himself in good positions. He may not be the tallest player on the field, but he does have a good vertical. And you get him in that dangerous position, he's going to make you pay.
Yeah, and first I'm going to start with Cavan, and I'm going to say this is really good to see from him, even though it's a simple tap-in, because it's smart movement and it's staying alive. I'm not going to name names, but there's some players in the Union this year that the ball goes over their head and they just kind of watch it go. And I talked to Ryan Richter after the Necaxa game, and I remember this quote because it's a cross to the back post from Indiana Vasilev. Cavan crashes the back post, takes a touch, puts it in. And Ryan Richter said something along the lines of, it's cool when you can beat 3 guys and curl it into the far post, but those are the types of goals that I want to see Cavan keep scoring, because you crash the back post and the ball will come. And it's a lot of work as a wide player, which Cavan's kind of a wide player, I guess, to make that run up the field and get to the back post as that ball comes in. But you will continue to score goals if you stay alive and you stay in the play. And that's exactly what this was. It wasn't a difficult finish, but it was a great and well-executed set piece. He stays alive and he times that second run perfectly. So good for Cavan. Like he said, he wants to add the goals and assists to his game. He's been playing well on the ball, and he gets one. So, that kind of hard work is going to continue to pay off if he continues to make those runs. But back to the set piece. I mean, this was off the training ground. This is beautiful. This is everything was right on the money here. So the Union really loved to go to the back post. They did it a lot earlier this season, but not as much since Neil Pierre has come into the lineup, because it's almost like if you have that guy, why would you try to knock it back and then back in? You could just let him go up and get it. But this ball from Olaski to Harriel is right on the money. And from where Harriel is, that isn't a position for a shot. It's to nod it back across. So I think this was a set play all the way through, and I think they just executed it perfectly. So like you said, credit to the coaching staff and credit to the players for pulling it off.
Yeah, and sticking with Cavan Sullivan here for a moment, I don't think this was Cavan's greatest game by any means. I thought besides the goal that he scored, he was pretty quiet in the first half, but then to his credit comes out pretty hot. 2 quick transition moments in the second half where Frankie Westfield's eventually flagged for offside, but Cavan dribbles past the player, finds Frankie, and then Frankie cuts the ball across the 18-yard box for Olaski, who completely misses the ball, which Olaski had a pretty quiet game for the Union, and it goes back to what people were commenting and what we talked about. Yeah, if Olaski's not scoring, who steps up in the forward role? It's a big concern. It's a big question, and that's why I think so many fans want to see the Union go out and bring in another striker. And Tom Berger, again, I'll keep mentioning this, mentioned that, yeah, the Union were in for Duncan Maguire from Orlando City, eventually goes to Houston. And we know John Shear is not going to go out there. He said as much. We're going to make a move that makes sense for us. We're not going to go out there and panic buy. And so if Duncan Maguire was their guy, their number one target, that's who they were locked on to, then there's no sense to really go out there and put yourself in a position where, okay, yeah, you may need a striker for the rest of the season, but you don't want to lock yourself up to something long-term. I think we go back a couple years ago to Sam Dideron when the Union bring him in from St. Louis City. That was never going to be a deal, Evan, where he was going to be here long-term. That was simply, okay, we need a striker for the second half of the season. Let's see if we can get anything out of him. The Union really don't. And then he moves on after the end of the season. So, yeah, maybe if the Union can get a player in MLS that is on a short-term contract, they can move on from them after the end of the season, then maybe the Union go out and find a player like that within MLS. I know a lot of people would love to see Jose. Yes, I see Jose in the chat. A lot of people would love to see Julian Carranza back at the club. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But he does seem to be loving life in Necaxa. I know he was pretty emotional. Jose and I talked about it a couple episodes ago when he came back to Philadelphia with Necaxa, how he loved being back. His family flew in from Argentina to come and see him. Yeah, it's a lot easier of a flight, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it's easier to fly to Mexico than it is from Argentina. But I do recall when Julian was in Philadelphia, his family was always flying over, coming to see him. I can remember his brother being here, other family members, and he would be taking pictures with them after the game, chit-chatting with them after the game. And so, yeah, all that to say, I don't think the Union are going to panic buy. Yes, I think they're aware that they probably do need another forward. But if they can't get a player out there, then they're not going to go ahead and force something. But back to Cavan Sullivan. So that play that they try to set up for Orlowski, it's unfortunate. Then the Union win the ball back with Jovan Lukic, comes off the bench in this game, replacing Jesus Bueno. And Cavan beats Danley John Jock, makes a run in behind. And a little bit unfortunate. Danley hits a post. That's a wicked shot. Union could have been 2-1 up in this game, but I think all things considered, Evan, 1-1's probably the fair result between both sides.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, just because, Cavan has this 15-minute stretch in the second half where he's just untouchable, and he plays in Frankie there. He plays in Danley. These are really good chances. At the same time, at the end of the game, Austin has a flurry of chances from the 80th minute onwards. There's one where Andre Blake comes out to collect the cross, and he almost has the howler of his life, and it slides through his legs. Neil Pierre clears. At the death, Andre Blake makes this an awesome save on Mirto Zini, I think it was, and another on Brandon Vasquez, actually on the doorstep. And all in all, it's a game I think could have been, 2-2, maybe even 3-3, but, the finishing wasn't there for either team. And, the defenders for both teams, like I think the commentators were saying, the defenders for both teams put out a couple fires. The goalkeepers played really well. Brad Stuver had a great save on Quinn Sullivan as well. I think both teams battled. I think both teams will probably feel like they could have taken the 3 points. But at the end of the day, I do think the draw is a fair result.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go ahead and talk about Ryan Richter going with the same starting 11 that he did against Inter Miami. And this was a shock to me, I'll be honest, Evan. I did not expect to see the same lineup, especially you had mentioned it earlier, 98 degrees at kickoff. The Union had played 3 days prior against Miami. And you would think, okay, maybe some rotation. Not drastically, but you could expect maybe 3 changes in the lineup. And Ryan Richter doesn't do that. I think maybe part of it is because the Union need every single point possible to make it into the playoffs, which, okay, I know with Atlanta winning tonight, they leapfrog the Union. They're in 12th place, the Union in 13th, both tied on 21 points. But if you look, they're only 3 points out of a final playoff spot. They're 5 points out of the number 8 spot, and then they're 6 spots out from being in 7th. 10 points behind Cincinnati, 11 behind Charlotte. That's a pretty significant drop, but I think if you would have told this fan base, Evan, that, yeah, the very first game that Ryan Richter takes over in June against Red Bull New York, that the Union would be potentially 6 points out from 7th place, I don't think anybody would believe you, but teams continue to drop points. Look, New York City and New England, they draw today. And if the Union pick up 3 points, now they're so much closer to 7th place. And I think that just goes to show you just how much of a mess that the Eastern Conference truly is. But regardless, 3 points out of a final playoff spot, I don't think a lot of people would have expected that this early on.
Yeah, being behind Atlanta doesn't sit well with me, but let me give everyone here like a little reminder about Ryan Richter and his role in the organization. So under Jim Curtin, Ryan Richter was the assistant coach. So he's working with Jim Curtin and the first team every day. He's in training. He's helping game plan with the first team. Under Bradley Carnell, he was the head coach of Union 2. So he's not with Bradley Carnell. He's not with the first team. He's with the second team. He's game planning with them. He's with those players every day. Different role, but also to the point that I'm making is Ryan Richter is a lot of his philosophies as a head coach will have come from Jim Curtin. He is probably as close to Jim Curtin as you're going to get. A lot of what he's learned in his professional experience has been in the Union organization with Jim Curtin. And Jim Curtin was a firm believer in building that chemistry with his players on the team and having his starting 11 with maybe 1 or 2 players. I know you guys, with 1 or 2 players rotating in or coming in as subs, I know you guys remember that 2022 run where it seemed like the same 11 played every game, and then Corey Burke would come in the 60th minute, and that was it, and nobody else would play. And I don't know if Ryan Richter is going to be that extreme with it, but from what we've seen so far, I mean, Richter has his guys. I mean, this starting 11, with the exception of the Lukic and Bueno flip, because Lukic was available for this game. Bueno came in on Wednesday because Lukic was suspended. Outside of that, this has been his starting 11. He has gone with Harrell as a center back, and he has gone with Pierre over Seri, and everything else this has been his starting lineup. And yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like long term, because I think some of these guys could have used a rest on Saturday, but yeah, hindsight is 2020. You know, maybe if you bring in Seri, maybe the chemistry with Harrell or maybe the chemistry with Pierre isn't there, and there's a mistake. But yeah, to me, it looks like Richter is going to be the type of guy where if he has his 11, he's going to stick with them until somebody asks to be pulled off or looks visibly really tired.
Kind of like Jim Curtin.
Exactly.
But let's go ahead and hear Ryan Richter, his thoughts after the game about selecting the same starting lineup as he did against Inter Miami, with the Heat potentially playing a factor into this game. What kind of went into Ryan's decision and all that?
Made it a hard decision, definitely. And I couldn't sleep between Wednesday and today, trying to think what was the right decision to go with. But ultimately decided to trust the guys to turn around again, and I think they did a good job in that. And then the guys that came in and the subs we made a little bit earlier than normal, they all did a good job as well. So I think everyone that played a role in the game did a good job and played the role well. So it was it was not an easy decision when we thought about it through the week.
And again, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision whatsoever. Knowing that the Heat's going to be a factor, yes, these are professional players. The body should be acclimated, but let's be honest, right? The Heat down in Texas is a lot different than what it is in Philadelphia. We're starting to come out of those hot summer months now, and I know August can potentially still be very hot and humid on the Northeast, but let's also face it too, right? We're a lot closer to September than we were the beginning of October, when it can be pretty brutal. And so to go down to Austin, where it's 98 degrees, this game gets pushed back 30 minutes because of the heat being that big of a concern. And you even see it on the close-ups, the faces of these players, they just look extremely worn out when they're getting the water breaks. And I was shocked. And that was Ryan Richter, I think, giving a confidence to the same starting 11 that got a point, got a result against Inter Miami. Probably should have won that game against Miami. You and I talked about Evan. But Ryan Richter said, you know what, let's go out. Let's send the same starting lineup out there. Let's make it right. Let's get a point. And now let's refocus now with Red Bull New York, another away game coming up. But 6 games unbeaten now for Ryan Richter. And a big part of it is because of those same 11 players that we constantly see on the field, Evan.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that this you see the chemistry a lot more than when Ryan first took over. I mean, I can tell even from the Atlanta game that it's improved a little bit. And yeah, this is the type of thing that when it's going well, it's going well, and when it's not going well, it's going to hurt you. I remember I've talked to people before around, the Union media scene about 2022 was a miracle season for the Union, and it was great, and everybody was playing amazing. It was a one-of-one team in this club's history, but also there were hardly any injuries that season. Everybody played, and they played like every week. And, aside from the Ali Bedoya injury in the playoffs leading up to MLS Cup, where Jack McGlynn just slotted in for him, everybody stayed really healthy that season. And I think, it looks a lot better on the coach when everyone's playing every week, when everyone's healthy. But again, this is the type of thing where if players start to go down and your depth hasn't played all season, that might, look a little rough. So it's a risk that Ryan's taking. I'm sure he knows this and he's aware of the risk of doing this. But, in this case, he goes with his guys and he gets a point on the road.
And then Ryan mentioned it, the guys coming off the bench playing a role in this game, and we'll play here in a bit. Ryan Richter's thoughts on Ezekiel Alado having a big moment that saved a potential game-winning goal in this match late on. But you see, Evan Konigsberg, we mentioned him earlier, coming on, replacing Jesus Bueno, wins the ball back in the defensive half of the field of Austin, and it creates this transition moment where Dejan Joveljic winds up hitting the post with the pass from Cavan. You see Cavan Sullivan come on and make an impact in this game. You had mentioned it earlier, Evan, that shot in the 75th minute, a great, powerful shot. And that actually starts with Augustine Anello. He had only been on the field for not even a minute, and he's just rushing down the left side of the field. A lot of space. I know both fullbacks are pushed up high for Austin, and the Union are able to capitalize on that. And now one of the center backs have to come out wide and close down Anello. But it was, I think these players, whether it be in Anello, whether it be in Alado, whether it be a Cavan Sullivan, I think they had a point to prove, Evan, coming off the bench, knowing that, look, it would have made a lot of sense to start these guys in this game against Austin 3 days after into Miami. But Ryan Richter trusts his guys, trusts his starting 11. And you see it instantly with Anello. You see it with Alado. Alado goes and makes this run across, going towards the touchline, being an option for Anello as he's going down the left side of the field, because Austin did a good job closing down that play. And it's a nice little combination play, a 1-2 between Alado and Anello. And then Anello plays it out wide to Cavan Sullivan. And we know Quinn loves those shots from out wide. But I think, again, Ryan Richter pushes all the right buttons with the players coming off the bench. Now, does he trust his guys maybe to start games? Maybe not yet. I know a lot of fans want to see Augustine Anello get some starts here. Some people were saying they want to see Anello start over Indiana Vasilev. I don't think so, because Indy's been in fine form. Again, we talked about it last episode, what's been different with Indy since Ryan Richter has taken over. I don't think he's done anything wrong where you say, hey, he's just not cutting it. Let's get somebody else playing as one of those two number 10s. I think that spot's his until he loses it, even if Cavan Sullivan's back to 100% match fit, because having Cavan Sullivan come off the bench, that's a big weapon for this Union side. Mm-hmm. And Anello, if he plays like he did last night coming off the bench, that's now another weapon for Ryan Richter.
Yeah, and again, circling back, I think with when you stick with your same team and you have 3 games in a week, maybe some guys are thinking, okay, I'm going to get a chance in this game. And if it's the same 11, that sends a message to the depth pieces that it's like, okay, the coaching staff is not at a point where you're trusted to play this match. And that message sends a message to the sub that's like, oh, I got to get on and I got to prove myself in my time on the field here. And, for a guy like Lukic, okay, he loses his spot to Bueno. He's available for this game, and Richter goes with Bueno over Lukic. So Lukic has something to prove coming in. Quinn has something to prove. Okay, maybe I want to show that I'm sharp enough to start, because Quinn, he's been a little rusty since he came back from his injury, to be expected, of course. But, the decision-making, the sharpness in his passing hasn't been at the level that it was. And he looked a lot sharper in the last couple minutes that he was in. He had a really good shot on goal that was saved by Stuver. And Anello is a very interesting one as well, because he was good coming in off the bench against Atlanta. in that comeback. And he was actually scored this year Atlanta away in a game that a lot of people are going to try to forget. And yeah, he does feel at times like a square peg in a round hole in the Union system. He's a player. He feels like a touchline winger, the way he starts on the left and he's very right-footed and wants to cut it and get a shot off. But he's such a direct player, and he really strikes uncertainty in defenders the way that when he gets on the ball, he drives straight at his defender and forces the defender to make a decision whether to drop or to cut him off. And to be honest, sometimes I wonder if he can be like a rotation piece for Milan Olaski as well, because Milan was running his ass off, but bless him, in the last 20 minutes of that game, he was gassed. And I understand, a lot of people, the commentators were just laying into him. And I felt unfair to me because I'm like, the guy has been running all week and he looks dead in this Austin heat. And, I wonder if Augie can play that role as well, because when he played in Uruguay, he was really known as a goal scorer. And given the types of runs he makes and the quickness he has, I do wonder if Milan needs a sub, if he can be the type of guy that can slide up to striker as well. I know we haven't seen too much of it, but I believe Bradley mentioned, he can be a striker and he can be a midfielder. We just haven't really seen it out of him this year. And I know that he's a guy that is struggling to earn minutes, but, you can really see his quality going forward. So maybe that's a guy that we see more of later in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned Ezekiel Alado, so I want to go ahead and play that clip here of Ryan Richter talking about the hustle from Alado and Milan Olaski on that play too, being one of the last defenders back there trying to stop Brendan Vasquez from potentially getting a game-winning goal.
Yeah, that was a pretty key play in the game. And I mean, I have to look exactly where he started when he started that run, but to make it all the way back and then put Vasquez off. If you look at the play, actually, it was our two strikers that were in the box that made the long runs to defend. So that kind of commitment is incredible. Milan first gets to him, and then when he cuts inside, Ezekiel is there as well. So that's what you can ask, is this kind of commitment. And this is like anything to do to win a game. That's what these guys did in this play. But it was a great recovery by Ezekiel.
Yeah, it was. It really was a great moment there. And I think, Alado's not scoring the goals. Of course, you pay all that money. The pressure is going to be on him. You expect him to score more goals than he has. You expect him to be in goal-scoring positions. But that hustle, when he comes back from his own offensive half defensively to try to put a body, to try to throw Brendan Vasquez off, that's going to excite any coach. And that type of hustle will get you game time in this playing system for Ryan Richter. Maybe Ryan Richter doesn't become the head coach. Any coach is going to look at that and say, I want this player in my team, because just because they're a striker doesn't mean that they're not going to put in the work defensively. And that's a big moment in this game that potentially saves the Union a point.
Yeah, and I think with the Union, one of the things they really stress, along with a bunch of the other teams in MLS, it's kind of a more popular playing style the last couple of years, is defending from the front. And, under Jim Curtin, the Union were a little bit more comfortable, getting into their own half and defending in their own half, having an organized press with specific cues. And when they win the ball, they counter and they play over the top. It's a little bit different under Carnell and a little bit different under Richter as well, where off the turnovers, the Union can keep teams in their own half a lot better. I think you saw it the second half against Miami. I mean, they couldn't get out. They were just stuck, and it was press from everybody. It's not as much as Danley runs. This starts with, if you turn the ball over in Miami's box, you're pressing their defenders so that they're clearing it out for a throw and not finding a pass up the field. And, San Jose played like this earlier in the season when they were playing well. A lot of the best teams in MLS play this way. And, I think this is something that Aldo had to learn. I think when he first got here, a lot of fans were kind of critical of his work rate. So for this, I think it's huge for Easy, given, his scoring struggles. Obviously, you can't snap your fingers and make all that better. But, this type of work rate is huge. And I mean, maybe there's a shot that he can turn this all around and get right in Ryan Richter's book with, these kind of plays, this kind of effort, because I mean, that spot's kind of open until one or one of him or Bruno Damiani starts scoring. So yeah, good for Easy. And it's cool that Richter pointed him out in his post-match interview.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and talk about Ryan Richter. We've talked a lot about him tonight. We meant to talk about this last episode, like I mentioned at the beginning, but we had just went on and went on and on about the antics from Inter Miami, which is totally fine. So we appreciate everybody that has listened so far or stuck through with us for an hour and 35 plus minutes. But that's not going to happen tonight, we promise, folks. But Ryan Richter, 4-0-2 in his first 6 games, 13 goals scored, 8 against. The Union are averaging 2.1 goals per game, 1.3 goals conceded per game under Ryan Richter. Under former head coach Bradley Cornell this season, the Union were averaging 1.2 goals per game, 2 goals conceded. And so we see the goals conceded per game under Richter and the goals per game scored, both up, 1 down. Key differences right away. And I know it's a small sample size, Evan, only 6 games in MLS. We got a small sample size in League's Cup. I can't really judge the Union too much because of them not really going for it, if we're being honest, against Santos Laguna. Laguna making 11 changes. And so I want to strictly look at what Ryan Richter has done with this team in MLS because they are undefeated. And we talked about it at the beginning. 3 points out of a final playoff spot, 6 points out of a place for seventh with New York City holding that down. The Union are averaging 2.3 points per game. And if they keep that up, Evan, for sure they're going to get in the playoffs. And if the East continues to play as bad as they do, maybe we see the Union get in between 5 to 7. And I think nobody would have seen that coming, but it's the confidence that Ryan Richter has brought to this team.
Yeah, so I hope that they're not kind of looking at the table because there's so many teams in the mix that at this point it's just you got to get it done each game and then at the end of the season see what happens because there's so many teams. I think there's 5 or 6 teams in a 5 or 6 point span. Like so much can change in a week with this conference right now. But when it comes to Ryan Richter, I think the mentality, it just looks night and day from the first half of the season where I think the Union got in a rut and they started to get down on them where they concede early and it'd be like, okay, here we go again. The comebacks and the resilience that we've seen from them the last couple of games has been a breath of fresh air. And I think I mentioned this before, but I don't know whether that has to do about, some of the personnel changes being the return of Cavan Sullivan and Kai Wagner and the addition of Neil Pierre. If it has to do with that or, I feel like the main reason for this has to be the manager and has to be, the instructions and what he's telling the players and the halftime team talks before the match, after the match and training. And for that, I think that's like invaluable. And it really flips the Union season because it's not like there's been a ton of changes to this roster aside from, there's been no huge goal scoring striker that's going to change everything. Obviously Kai brings a lot more solidity and a veteran presence, but Ryan Richter deserves a lot of credit for really changing the mentality in this dressing room, and the players look really bought in.
So I know we still have 12 games to go until the end of the season. 6 games undefeated. This team looks completely different. I gave you guys some stats, some numbers to back that up. Let's say, Evan, the Union make a play-in spot. Let's say they make it either 8 or 9, and let's say they don't even win the play-in game, meaning that their season's over. Because we know the play-in game, it's one and done. And let's say the Union do make an 8 or 9 seed, but they don't advance out of that game. Do you think that would be enough to solidify Ryan Richter getting the head coaching job, removing the interim tag?
I think it would. It's kind of hard to evaluate Richter on the outcome of the season because of just where the team was left when he took over. But I think looking at the players, looking at how the team is playing on the field, I think it would be kind of foolish at this point to go and try something different. And I think in terms of the Union and their front office, it comes to a point where you look at the great coaches that have come from this organization and you look at Jim Curtin, BJ Callahan, and Pat Noonan at Cincinnati. And you start to think, is Ryan Richter the next guy up? And if you don't hire Ryan Richter, is he going to go somewhere else and be the next BJ Callahan, the next Pat Noonan? And, you know, I think that this is the type of guy in Ryan Richter that they want to keep in-house. And while he is a young coach and, you know, maybe they're thinking we want somebody older to keep giving Ryan experience, I think Ryan has proven that he's ready for this. And so I think that if the Union don't keep Ryan Richter, this might be the type of guy that they regret letting leave the building later on.
Yeah, I agree with you too. And it is interesting. You mentioned BJ Callahan, you mentioned Pat Noonan. I do want to point out, right, that neither one of those guys were going to become the next head coach of the Philadelphia Union because the Union had Jim Curtin at the time, and nobody would have seen Curtin getting fired after the 2024 season. But it is interesting to note, Evan, that here's a guy, Jim Curtin, that had been with the organization for over 10 years, and his coaching tree now suddenly looks pretty intriguing. We know Pat Noonan's done wonders for Cincinnati. Nashville's the best team right now in the Eastern Conference, and I know there was all this talk like, oh, the U.S. should have hired BJ as the permanent manager. They shouldn't have had him filling in as the interim, and goes to Nashville, and he's completely turned that organization around. And I think that's a testament to Jim Curtin, people within this organization that do have a good eye for talent, for up-and-coming coaches. And Ryan Richter does, for sure, appear to be that next coach. There's no way Ryan Richter, if the Union don't hire him, there's zero chance that he goes back to MLS Next Pro. He's well past that. I would find it harsh for Ryan to even go to the USL Championship. I think he should be in line for a head coaching job in MLS if the Union don't make him permanent. But even if they don't make him permanent, okay, maybe he goes and is an assistant for a year, maybe 2 years at most. Maybe he goes to Austin with Jim Curtin and becomes his assistant coach again if he doesn't get the head coaching job. Who knows? But regardless, I do think this organization has a lot of respect, a lot of love for Ryan Richter. I think we hear it all the time from the players. They love playing under Richter. He's brought stability. He's brought belief back into this group. And I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, tactics matter in the game, but if you have players that don't have belief in each other, if they don't have belief in the coach, then you're screwed. And the Union have that under Richter. And so I would be shocked, Evan, if we sit here a couple weeks from now and we hear that the Union are removing the interim role and making Ryan Richter the head coach. I think that's something that maybe comes and is announced at the end of the season.
Sure.
But I do think the Union have the guy in Ryan Richter.
Yeah, I think it's almost a formality at this point, to be honest.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Still ways to go. Jillian brings up an interesting comment. She says, it's funny when you think that Ale is older than Ryan. I honestly didn't realize that. Ryan Richter is what, 37? Bedoria's 38, 39? So, yeah, that's an interesting little pool there from Jillian. But Ryan Richter, has done a phenomenal job for the Philadelphia Union. So before we get into Blunder of the Week, I know I named the episode title this, and we should probably talk about it, Evan. Neil Pierre's strong performance. I have a highlight package that I brought up of what Neil did defensively. I'll release that tomorrow on Instagram and Twitter. I was going to try to show it here on the show, but apparently it says the file's too big, and I don't feel like trying to cut the video in half to try to get it uploaded. So we won't look at that, but look, if you watch the game, you know Neil Pierre had a huge game defensively for the Union. I mentioned it way at the beginning in the intro. These people after the Inter-Miami game saying, oh, all Neil Pierre does is score. I don't think I've seen any defensive play from him, anything that stood out. But if you look at this game for a whole, a draw, we both admit, was probably the fair result. But there's a couple times in this game, Evan, that Austin could have snuck away and won all 3 points at home at Q2 Stadium against the Union. And a big reason for that was, yes, you mentioned it too, Andre Blake had a couple big saves. 94th minute, really big save on Uzuni towards the end of the game. But Neil Pierre had multiple blocks in this game. A big block on Christian Ramirez. You had mentioned it too, Evan. Andre Blake spills the cross from out wide. A simple cross, should just pick that up, and instead it goes underneath him. I don't think Brandon Vasquez really anticipated that. And Neil Pierre is there to be aware and clear up the danger. but he was everywhere. I feel like for the Union. Maybe he wasn't as big of a threat as we've seen offensively for the Union, but defensively, he put up quite a few fires, and this is only going to help his game going forward. I think this is only going to continue to instill confidence in him. Yes, 6 games since he's been back from Lyngby, he's been in the starting 11 for all of them, or he's appeared in 6 games for sure. I'll look at that for a second. But Neil Pierre, I think, is your lockdown defender for the rest of the season if he's here, right? Because if he continues to play this way, I do wonder if a team comes out and gives the Union an offer they can't refuse. Maybe they do come to an agreement and say, hey, you can hold on to him for the rest of the season, and then we'll take him on in the wintertime. But if Neil continues to play this way, Evan, maybe a last minute bid comes in for the 18-year-old. Maybe the next big thing, United States men's national team center back.
Yeah, so I said after the Miami game that I thought it was his worst game since coming into the lineup. Despite the set piece heroics, it was kind of sloppy at the back from him. This, I think, was his best performance. And there was no goal from a corner. There was no assist with the header. But my gosh, that was like, as far as center back performances go, it was great from Neil. He had an excellent block in the first half on a chance that came to Christian Ramirez at the back post. And it's just like laying out every inch of his 6'7" frame. It was just, I couldn't believe he got over there to make the block. He made a lot of really clean tackles on the ground. There was one in the corner that he just outmuscles Uzuni, comes out with it and just starts dribbling up the line and finds a man. I mean, he eliminated almost all of Austin's crossing opportunities, just heading balls out. And as well, in a game that I said earlier was really sloppy, he was really composed with his passing, and there wasn't many loose passes from Neil on Saturday night. So I thought all around, all things considered, this was by far his best performance since coming to the Union starting 11. And I know it doesn't show up in goals and assists, but as a center back, this is really what you want to see him grow into as his game matures. So I was really happy with Neil's performance, and I'm excited to see the highlight tape that you put together, because I think people will really start to appreciate the work that he put in on Saturday night.
He was big. 2 out of 3 tackles, 1 3 blocks, 7 clearances, 3 interceptions, 10 ball recoveries. I don't think he put in a wrong foot forward at all. Ryan Richter did say after the game that he thought that Neil was the Union's best player on the field. Talking about the blocks, stepping out of the line, big clearances, just an overall really solid game from Neil Pierre. Yep. And I do hope that he's here in the rest of the season. I would be dumbfounded, Evan, if he's here at the beginning of next season. I put out a tweet after Inter Miami saying the Union shouldn't listen to offers unless they start at $25 million. Well, okay, he's always going to be an option on set pieces offensively. But if he continues to grow, and he's 18 years old, I want to emphasize that. He's 18 years old. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to have bad games every now and then. It's what happens with 18-year-olds. But you continue to play at a high level. You continue to be thrown out there in the fire. You're going to learn from the mistakes. You're going to learn. You're going to grow as a player. And it is interesting. And I think Nathan Harrier also had a pretty solid game, too, for the Union once again, playing as a center back, not in his natural right back role. But they formed a pretty good center back pairing. And I know we talked about it, Mark McKenzie coming back to the organization in January. So many fans would love to see Mark and Neil pair with each other, but I don't know if it happens. But really, really solid performance from Neil. A strong reason why the Union got a point leaving Austin, and hopefully that continues the rest of the season or until Neil's no longer a Philadelphia Union player. But anything else you want to add before we go to Blunder of the Week for this game, Neil Pierre, anything in general, Evan?
I mean, I just want to emphasize that, like you said, the partnership with Nate is there. And we talked about earlier that the starting 11 is what Richter's been sticking with. He clearly sees something in this partnership. And I think that's what you're going to see for most of the rest of the season is this Harriel and Pierre partnership. And it's kind of unconventional. I guess Harriel's a bit shorter than the average center back, but, he's really improved his play a lot. And I think being alongside Neil is part of that. I think it's a combination that works. So I have no issues with it.
No, none at all. So Blunder of the week, I put it in the show description, and I'm gonna go and change that after you guys watch it live. So maybe you guys, if you guys pay attention, I always put the description on YouTube before we go live, giving you guys an idea of what we're going to talk about on the show. Most of the time, we talk about the topics that I put on there, but sometimes we kind of go off the rail because, again, I said it last episode, you guys ultimately decide what direction the show goes. And so, Blunder of the week was going to be. Apparently, I saw reports out of San Jose that San Jose got demolished by Minnesota at home. And apparently a fan took a beer can, threw it, chucked it at Bruce Arena, and it hit him in the back. And I just want to say that what I chose Blunder of the week doesn't diminish fans throwing stuff, because I've talked about it on past episodes where I'm sure you recall, Evan, when Hani Mukhtar scored in front of the River End a couple years ago, all the hot dogs got thrown out on the field, and that ended Dollar Dog Night for the Philadelphia Union because some fans don't know how to behave themselves. But under no circumstances should fans react that way, throwing things on the field, whether it hits people or not. Like, you got to control your emotions. At the end of the day, it's just a game, right? It's for entertainment. And if you can't control your emotions, then you probably shouldn't go to sporting events. But Blunder of the week, and I tell you guys all the time, you guys can DM me, you guys can email me, because apparently you guys find the email address, which it's not hidden. Like, I don't try to find the email address, so I don't even know how some of you guys find the email address. And you guys send emails and leave nice comments, and I appreciate it. But I tell you guys all the time, if you have Blunder of the weeks, please nominate them, because I don't want it to be all on me. Like, you guys have a voice. Your voice counts. And if you guys can convince me that you have a better Blunder of the week than what I'm thinking, then we'll go ahead and play your Blunder of the week. And so, Blunder of the week, Evan, I don't know if you saw this. I did not see this at all. I use Twitter the most for social media. I did not see this at all. Good friend of the show, Jessica Sharman, reposted this on Instagram, and I messaged her. I was like, well, this solidifies it. You've given me Blunder of the week. I really appreciate it. And so Blunder of the week is going to be Crewe Alexandria's Josh Marsh.
Oh my God.
Stealing the ball, coming from behind Northampton goalkeeper to score the winning goal. Have you seen this play, Evan?
I have. It's the oldest trick in the book, Todd, and he fell for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is embarrassing. And so hopefully Paramount doesn't take down the podcast for playing this. I don't think I've ever played a Paramount clip, but it's only 12 seconds long. So hopefully the overlords at Paramount don't have an issue with this. Fingers crossed. Yes. But here's Blunder of the week.
This afternoon, thriller in the early kickoff. Bristol Rovers 5, Newport 3. Chesterfield beaten Salford by a 0-0, and 0-0 Walsall and Grimsby. In the 3 o'clocks, Colchester beat Oldham 2-1. Exeter beat.
All right, and so if I can figure out a way how to mute that clip, then I'll go ahead and I'll play it again. But yeah, that was not good, Evan, whatsoever. The goalkeeper going to take a goal kick, the attackers out of bounds on the play between Crewe, Alexandra, and Northampton in and the EFL League 2, which is right the level right above non-league. Crewe Alexander go on to win this game 1-0. But like you said, Evan, that's like the worst trick in the book. I cannot believe the goalkeeper was just not aware of where the attacker was whatsoever.
Yeah, and I feel like this only it's Little League. Like, it's crazy. Like, and I can't believe it's crazy people try this. It's crazy it works. I feel like also this only happens late in the game. I don't know if it's because players are like, oh, this is the last kick of the game. It doesn't matter if I get back in the shape or not. I'm either scoring this and he forgets about me, or the game's over. I remember this happened in MLS last season or the season before. It was like Jamal Tiare on Atlanta. He came from behind the goalkeeper and he scored. I mean, as a goalkeeper, this has to be like the single worst feeling. Just like, oh, why did I not just punt the ball away? how did I not know that there was a guy there? And it's just like the dumbest, most crushing way to lose a match at the end.
Yeah, and the fact was, like, this goal wasn't even towards the end of the match. It was in the 53rd minute.
Oh my
so
god!
There's so much to be played. I feel like if this was towards the end of the game, Evan, I feel like that would be that more agonizing. But the goalkeeper puts the ball down and drops it. As soon as he drops it, kicks it. I mean, it's great awareness there from Marsh, the attacker, to be aware of the play that, hey, look, the goalie drops this, he takes a touch. I'm going to pounce on this. And that steals all 3 points for Crewe Alexandra after a perfect 2-0 start early on in the EFL League 2. But yeah, as a goalkeeper, I mean, I have no clue what that does for your confidence. I mean, I feel like that's just one of those where you got to move on. And the fact that was the one and only goal in the game, yeah, that's a not good moment, Evan.
Yeah, not good.
Perfect timing. Yes, that clip from Jim Curtin never gets old. But yeah, fantastic moment. Thank you, Jessica Sharman, for uplifting that so we can talk a little EFL League 2 footy on the podcast. Evan, it's been a blast. Definitely not as long as last episode, which, look, I'm not going to lie, I love talking. But after such a long episode last time, I was like, man, I'm not looking forward to editing this podcast. So at least this episode's going to be a little bit easier of a edit. Anything you want to plug? Anything you have coming up, Evan?
No, just reminder that, yeah, you guys can find my work at PhiladelphiaSoccerNow.com and on social media at Philadelphia Soccer Now. And you can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Evan Knows Ball. And that's where I post my local soccer updates and some of the short form videos I've been working on. So keep an eye out for some of those coming up.
Yeah, and I want to go ahead and lift this comment way earlier in the show from my co-host, Jose Nunez, good friend of both of us, Evan. He said, I hope Hoagie is happy, officially replaced by Evan. And this is on me, so I'll give you guys a behind the scenes. So I had told Evan days prior, I was like, all right, can I get you on for the Inter Miami game? And you're like, yeah, I'll try to make it work. I'm watching Pittsburgh versus Maryland. Obviously winds up happening. I said, okay, well, if I can't get you, can you commit to at least the Sunday episode talking about Austin? He's like, yeah, I can definitely do that. Well, Evan, being the great guy he is, says, yeah, I'll do both shows. And so we get Evan for back-to-back shows. I kid you not, Evan. Jose texts me and he says, can we do the show on Monday? And I'm like, I already have it scheduled on Sunday night with Evan. I was like, I'm not telling Evan we're canceling this. I told all the listeners last episode that we're doing the show on Sunday because these guys come to expect the day after the game, there's a podcast. And so we want to keep the routine. Yeah, we may not start exactly at 9:00, but we do start around then. And the one thing that I didn't want to do is like interrupt Jose from this bachelor party. I knew he would be coming back on Sunday. And so I was like, okay, he hasn't been home in a while. Probably wants to spend some time with his wife and the kids. I'm not even going to think about asking Jose to come onto the show. I said, let's get everyone onto the show. And I gave Jose a complete 180 and say, yep, here's Evan. Back-to-back shows. And now Jose thinks that he's officially replaced by you, Evan.
Yeah, Jose, I'm sorry about that, brother. I'm not coming for your spot. I say, in revenge, we do a show tomorrow without Todd.
Facts. Facts. There might be a show, Evan, honestly. I got to debate. I got to work out the schedule. But the Montreal game is on September 5th, which is a Saturday. And then that would mean Sunday we're doing the podcast. I may not be going to a concert on Sunday. And so if I do go to a concert, maybe you and Jose can do that show. Maybe there is no Todd. It could be the Evan and Jose show. I'll be replaced on the show that I created. And I do want to say that I did try to get Mark Kelkenberg on here with us too. It could have been me, you, and Mark.
Oh my gosh,
Mark,
that would have been a party.
Mark didn't do it. He let us down, Evan.
Come on, Mark. Mark's watching college soccer. He's doing just fine.
He is doing just fine, but yeah, maybe we see in a couple weeks the Evan and Jose Nunez show. No Todd Lewis for the night, but that's something I can talk with you guys later on and see if we can get that worked out. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod wherever you get your podcasts of the Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/freekickpod, live every single podcast episode. Goals breakdown video, if you guys haven't watched it, is out between Austin FC and Philadelphia Union. No Inter Miami goals breakdown video. I'm so sorry, guys. Just life happens. But if you guys want to check out my writing goals breakdown video or the podcast all in one place, check out thefreekick.substack.com. To be determined, though, if we have a midweek episode with a Apple commentator for this upcoming game on Saturday against Red Bull New York up in Harrison, New Jersey. Philadelphia Union looking to bounce back with a win. They do remain undefeated through the first 6 games under interim head coach Ryan Richter. But we know how history has been against the Red Bull in the past against the Union. The hope to go and get all 3 points this season in Harrison, unlike last season where the Red Bull, you guys will remember this if you guys went to the game, just celebrating like they had just won the MLS Cup against the Union. The mascot breaks into Bradley Cornell's press conference, celebrating, mocking. What a joke of a night it was in Harrison last year. So hopefully none of that stuff happens again. Hopefully the Union can come away with 3 points. But to be determined, like I said, on a midweek preview episode. Maybe I don't do a Neil Pierre piece at some point this week, but expect a podcast episode next Sunday for sure as we review the match against Red Bull New York. Hopefully the Philadelphia Union remain undefeated under Ryan Richter. But with that said, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.